Good afternoon, everyone. Today is December 19th, 2023. It's 1 p.m. This is a City Council study session. Thanks for attending, and we always look forward to Joe Baines and his, along with Tim and their department, Parks and Recreation. This should be very informative. Roll call, please.
Mayor Good.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Here.
Councilwoman Fruworth.
Here.
Councilman Gambogi.
Here.
Councilman Montoya.
I am here.
Councilman Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. As we have been discussing, bringing forward various department overviews for council to get a good understanding of, and for the public to get a good understanding of the various aspects and services under which each department is responsible for. Today, we're going to be talking about Parks and Recreation, and I'll leave the surprise for Joe, because while it's called Parks and Recreation, it covers much, much more than just Parks and Recreation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Baines and Mr. Ledger, and just as a reminder, really the reason we bring these forward is because we want council to be able to consider any interests that they may have, council direction they would like to give related to future policy considerations as council moves into their 2024 council priorities. So I'll turn that over to Joe and Tim. Thank you.
All right, thank you, City Manager, and thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm echoing a little bit here? Okay. All right. Thanks for the opportunity to present an overview of our department. Members of the public, welcome as well. So I'll just get started real quick. Like Katie mentioned, we do a lot more than just recreation services, fleet, facility. We've got a lot going on, so happy to present that to you today. So we'll go through today our department overview, our structure and budget, strategic initiatives we have, and then kind of division overviews. I think we have about 6 or 7 different divisions within recreation services. Our areas of responsibility include recreation programming. That's all the adult softball leagues, a lot that goes on there. Parks maintenance, lakes and landscape, trails, natural parklands, fleet services, facility maintenance, Antelope Hills Golf Complex, and then the forestry division, which is new to our department this fiscal year, and really excited about it. Here's our organizational structure. There's a lot on there, but 58 full-time employees and quite a few seasonal employees, especially when our adult sports season starts with scorekeepers and umpires and whatnot. Kind of our budget overview. Some of this, if you look at the capital there, it's a little bit inflated in that we had budgeted, I believe, $9 million for the Glassford Hill open space purchase, which ended up being under $700,000. So that's a little inflated, but there it is. And then our strategic initiatives, these are really important. These are the core of what we do. We are going to continue to seek revenue opportunities that can help support the general fund, support the City Council, develop strategic goals, which one of those is to support the general fund. We want to support economic development by constructing, maintaining, and marketing outdoor recreation infrastructure to attract that ecotourism visitation and its related spending. So this will go through my PowerPoint almost every slide. That stays pretty relative, you know, whether it's special events that we're trying to attract or softball tournaments or just outdoor recreation for people that come, you know, enjoy the parks and trails that we have to offer. We want to stay current with technological advances that can support efficiencies. I've got a few examples of that as we go through the overview. And then this is a really important one, and kind of speaks back to just one example was the Glassford Hill purchase with our partners in Prescott Valley and Yavapai County, as we want to continue to advance those partnership opportunities with our neighboring communities. That's not only, you know, our neighbors, but it's Yavapai County, it's the federal and state governments through grant funding, which we'll be very aggressive with. So really just keep working hard on that. And then again, aggressively pursue grant funding for eligible capital projects. I have for the last 10 years sat on the State Parks Board, on the AORC board that looks at grant funding, and we really have some great opportunities here. We've had the State Parks Director down here a number of different times looking at some of the future projects like the Granite Dells Gateway Park, and they're very interested in helping with some grant funding for that. We'll start off with recreation programming. I will argue we probably have the best pictures of any department that's going to come here. I'm not bragging. It's just facts, okay? Lacey Medina did that for us. So recreation programming, our strategic goals, all through our department, we want to maintain a high level of customer service throughout our city parks and recreation spaces. We want to maintain all those assets at a safe and aesthetically pleasing standard. We do, and this might be a little bit unknown to a lot of people, but there's a fair amount of commercial filming that goes on in Prescott. Our department is part of that. We work with the tourism folks in that, but for example, we just did a Toyota commercial here about a month ago. These are good with the spending that happens in the community when you bring those filming opportunities up, but it's also good for our image. So we really want to continue to work with our partners in the tourism department to promote that more. We want to construct and strategically construct our special event and sporting event calendars to maximize visitation and that spending that it brings. That means if we have an opportunity to do a softball tournament that has 6 teams, but yet we've got one that wants the same weekend that's going to bring in 30 or 40 teams, we want to build it where the 30 or 40 teams are going to come here and visit, spend money in our community. We need to update our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It's been quite a while since that's been done. That will be in my capital for this next fiscal year to do that, and has been on my plan for the last 5 years. And then increase our social media presence to help help reach the community about projects and special events and things that are going on. Continue to improve in that. And objectives to those goals are, we want to address patron complaints within 48 hours. We want to be.
Councilman Gambogi had a question.
A number of slides ago, you mentioned ecotourism, and I've seen numbers from the rodeo that says the rodeo brings this amount of visitors to Prescott a year. Do you have any idea what ecotourism brings?
So, Councilman Gambogi, yes, we do for our sports calendar. That's pretty easy to estimate. We've got X amount of teams, we've got X amount of players, and X amount of parents and grandparents that are following that. And there's, we can estimate the spending, and we do that. And I think it's in a future slide. It might even be the next slide, but it's about $5 million a year. The one that's really difficult for us is outdoor recreation, which we know is probably the lion's share of what we get because it happens year round. But there's really no way to scan zip codes or find out, where they're coming from or how long they're staying. But suffice to say, it's significant in what we do.
So the outdoor recreation is the hiking and ecotourism?
Absolutely, yes. People are coming here from all over the country, and when we go get our regional park put together and start really working on promoting it more nationwide, we'll see a lot more of that too. And we get a lot of foreign visitors, and I love data, and I want to collect data everywhere we can. This one's just really difficult. We have trail counters, so we do know that we increase about 10% a year in trail visits. We don't know whether they're from Prescott, Scottsdale, or Switzerland. So anyway, it's definitely a big part of our portfolio for people that want to come to visit Prescott. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, and again, add more large-scale sports tournaments. We're constantly looking for other opportunities. I mean, boat races on Watson Lake, things that, we haven't quite brought home yet, but we talk to everybody and we find out what might be a great opportunity for us. And again, this will be woven through the whole presentation too, as we want to develop, partnerships and nurture the existing ones to help us better serve the community by expanding those recreational opportunities. Some of the services and programs we offer: adult sports leagues. We have over 1,000 participants in this last year. The sports that we do, and these are all adult, are softball, basketball, and volleyball. The youth sports are run through, whether it's AYSO or Prescott Little League or whatever. We help support those by providing fields and helping, however we can. We also have a SNAP program, a special needs activity program that's been going on for quite a few years. here in the city of Prescott. They do dances, craft nights, bingo nights. There's about 200, well, it says about 100 special needs individuals that attend those on a regular basis. I believe the list is more like 200 people. So it's really it's a $3,000 a year budget. It's really not much. We get volunteers and we get gifts donated and things like that, but it's something that really is valuable for those folks in our community. We do a lot of Ramada rentals, camping. The special event permitting all goes through the programming department, which Michelle Stacy Schroeder does a great job with. There's a lot of those, and we've been capitalized on that. I was just thinking about this the other day. December used to be one of our lowest months for bed tax collections, maybe as recent as 5 or 6 years ago. Now it's one of our best months. So we've done a really good job of bringing in those Christmas events and working with our partners at the chamber and all that. So that's really taken a big leap. Nature Niños program, which was just introduced last year, and I think there's about 200 people that are signed up for that to come out on Saturdays and explore the parks. Junior Ranger program, which was implemented last year as well. This next one I'll talk about a few times through the slide, but we have a community restitution plan. We worked with our legal department and Mitch Padilla to grow that restitution program so that folks can pay back their debt to the community through weed abatement or cleaning up the parks. It's huge for us. We used to get about 12,000 man hours a year out of it. It went pretty non-existent for a period of time. Now it's revitalized, and we're working our way back up to about 5,000 hours. So 2,000 hours, 2,080 hours is one full-time position. So we expect that once we get this thing fully operational again, we can get back to that 10,000 man hours, which is about 5 full-time positions. Really important. The Veterans Day Parade was the largest Veterans Day Parade in the state. Again, Michelle Stacy Schroeder did a wonderful job with that. We do a Friday night family movie night at Kinley Field that's pretty well received. That was through a donation from an entity that wanted to help out with things for kids to do on Friday nights in the summer. So that's been going on about 5 years now. And then
Mayor.
Teen Task Force. Question?
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe, I had a question about the restitution program you talked about a moment ago. Is that limited to people who've committed infractions against city code, or is it broader than that? Is it just city court related people that are doing that restitution, or can you speak to that?
It's both, and Joe walked out, but yeah, these are non-felony offenders that have some restitution to pay off, and they can do that through working off a certain amount of hours. We've been assigning them at about 6-hour increments, which works out well. We've got a van with a trailer that we can haul about six of them around and get a lot of work done in the parks. It's super valuable.
And they're primarily doing like landscaping work then? Is that the case?
Pardon me?
They're primarily doing landscaping work and things like that?
Yeah, a lot of weed abatement, cleaning up the parks, and and our legal department has kind of revitalized this just recently in the past year or so, along with the county court. Mitch Padilla has been great to build that back up because, again, it had kind of gone to nothing.
Thank you.
So some of the accomplishments in the last year, we hosted, as I mentioned, the largest Veterans Day Parade in the state of Arizona, re-implementing that community restitution program. The races and tournaments held in Prescott, here you go, Councilman Gambogi, was about $5 million in economic impact. We did install an ADA compliant walkway at the Community Nature Center. With a lot of these types of things that we do, this was a partnership. We got some CDBG funding. We had a RAC grant from the federal government. We had some private donations and then some city money that went into it. But just about almost every project that we bring to you guys has some form of a partnership in it. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we get in along the way here. The Nature Niños program, again, this is for like 0 to 5-year-old kids. I mean, it's the little ones in our community, which we can always do better at finding more for them to do and get them immersed into the parks early in their life. Next division is the Parks Maintenance Division. our strategic goals there. We want them to help us, assist us with the completion of the planning for the Granite Dells Gateway Park, which, by the way, we're about at a 60% plan. There will be some public meetings coming up after the first of the year as we work our way towards 100% plan design on that. Again, maintain all of the city's recreational assets at a safe and aesthetically pleasing standard. Continue to revitalize our current sports complexes. This one I want to point out that we do a lot in our operating budget. This isn't, when I say revitalizing, it isn't a capital request that we're going to hire somebody to come out and build something for us. We're very capable. We have these folks standing behind me that are very handy, and we do a lot of things throughout the year that we're able to do a lot of revitalization just through our operating budget. We've been working on this for a while, and we've got quite a few of our athletic field lights are automated. But we want to get to 100% on that, where we can run them from the phone and program them, and so they don't stay on all night, and so that they're monitored. We want to be proactive on our pavement preservation. We have a lot of parking lots in the park system. Take, for example, Pioneer Park is huge. It's several hundred spaces, and so we want to be proactive on that. We're working on some plans to repurpose Willow Creek Ball Field. It's just down below the dog park. It's got some drainage problems that have kind of made it difficult to maintain. And so we really want to sit down this year and figure out what we can do internally to help bring that back a little bit. So there's definitely some low-hanging fruit that we think we can take care of. Again, we want to maintain that high level of customer service throughout the city parks. I encourage all of our lake staff does a wonderful job of, meeting with the public and answering questions about, fishing or what's the best trails or whatever. We love that. That's what we do. And I think if anybody calls our office and has a question about where to go, we've got the answers.
Councilman Gambogi.
Joe, I used to practice out at that old Willow Creek ballpark. Is there no market for families to show up and play a game of softball there?
Yeah, Councilman Gambogi, they can. It's operational. They can get out there and play, and that's kind of one of our open fields, and that's sort of what it's kind of gone to now. Is families will go out there and play. Senior softball will go out there and practice, but there are some things we can do to make it a little bit better. It's because of its location, it's kind of got a gopher problem too that is a little harder to eradicate than some of the other places. And then, like I mentioned, drainage problems. That elevation from that parking lot to the surface of Willow Lake is negligible. It's very, very flat.
How are the basketball courts coming along out there?
The concrete is all poured. Tim or Adam, you want to speak to that?
So concrete's poured. The surfacing, which is the markings and epoxy, is going to go on in probably April. The fencing is in works. We're going to do some sidewalk around it. Light poles should be installed this week. So things are moving very good. We'll come to a standstill here until it warms up a little bit with the epoxy, though.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I have a question about Pioneer Park. I'm sorry, but I was under the impression that the Pioneer Park complex was county owned and operated.
No, we have an intergovernmental agreement with the county where we maintain all the recreational facilities in Pioneer Park. So it's kind of a joint partnership, but through the IGA, we're the ones responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then last thing on this slide is that we're there when the snow falls. We're one of the departments that's forward facing and getting the citizens back on the road, and especially keeping all the city facilities open for business. So hopefully, maybe not hopefully, but pretty soon it'll come up. Let's put it that way. It's going to happen. We're going to get some snow. So just kind of a highlight of our services and our facilities. We have 15 multi-use athletic fields, 12 pickleball courts, 14 playgrounds, 1 splash park, dog park, skate park, the outdoor basketball court, which will be done in the spring, 16 restrooms that get serviced every day, 7 days a week, about 30 special events and tournaments within the parks, pretty much from late March until October. Every weekend we've got something going on at Pioneer Park with a tournament of some kind. again, one of our accomplishments is implementing, and I'll have Adam Camacho come up here a little bit later and talk a little bit more about the forestry division, but we're super excited to be a part of that. Really being proactive and being a fire adaptive community is super important. Let's see. Well, just a little bit I want to talk about. This is one of our strategic initiatives is, staying up with technologies. Last year we bought a robotic field striping system that we can preload, set up with GPS. It can go with one person, whereas before we were pulling string, snapping lines, painting. This thing, once it's programmed, it can run and mark all of our fields for us, saving an immense amount of labor. It saves on paint. And the cool thing, and we did this at the Ken Lindley Field when Yavapai College had their soccer season going on, we can put City of Prescott logos in the grass. Just kind of a little touch. We always want to roll out the red carpet when it comes to bringing these tournaments in, and little things like that's important to people that are coming to visit our area and see that we really, really care. Next one is our Lakes and Landscape Division. So in the Lakes and Landscape, just to give you some perspective, is all of the rights of way in the City of Prescott that have plants growing in them is our responsibility. So all the planters downtown, we have, I think, 9 different city buildings that we do the landscape maintenance on. So water reduction is really important to us. We're looking at some artificial turf opportunities, turf reduction. Memorial Island is a great example. It's the gateway to Prescott. Everybody drives by it. We put a lot of time into making that thing look really good. What we want to do now is maybe reorganize it a little bit to save a little bit more water, but still make it appealing to our residents and visitors as they drive by. But there's some opportunity there, and we'll continue to look for opportunities to improve on that. Back to the partnerships, we want to work with our partners at Game and Fish. We've talked about building a fishing dock at the lower lake now that it's open that can stretch from one shore to the other, so that people could have an opportunity to fish off that fishing dock. And there's grant opportunities there that we've talked to our partners at Game and Fish about, so we'll be working towards that. Again, the revitalization of our current facilities is an ongoing thing that happens through our operating budget. We're always looking for opportunities. As simple as, the maintenance guys poured some concrete and they fashioned one into a softball, one into a soccer ball, one into a pickleball, and we set those up at the entrance to the different facilities. A small thing, but it's that little touch. So, and that's their idea, and they put that into play. Let's see. Camping opportunities. We've had on our capital plan for a number of years here. Willow Lake is our least visited lake. There is an opportunity there to do some camping, which could create some revenue. So we're going to continue to work on that. Again, back to the proactive pavement preservation, a lot of parking lots. We need to do a new request for proposals for the boating-related concession at the lakes. That continues to grow every year with the kayaks and the paddle boards now, and we want to kind of expand that offering a little bit. We get a percentage of those revenues through that contract, but it's time to get that back out to bid and see what we can do, as far as promoting that a little bit more and getting a little more revenue out of that. And again, creating revenue opportunities at every opportunity that we can find. Let's see. The planters, downtown, they're very visible. Those are another one of those things that we put a lot of time into, and these guys, they really care about it. It's not just a job for them. They just really take a lot of pride in that. Back to the community restitution workers, that's important. Our services and programs, so Watson Lake, we have remodel rentals that, we'll be looking at our fee structures this year in all of our rentals. I think it's time to probably look at those and see if there's maybe a little more revenue we can create there. But we have remodel rentals at Watson Lake. We have the large grass area, which has been great for our larger events. 35 camping sites there, which stay pretty busy during the camping season. We do a lot of weddings. I'm going to guess we do probably at least a dozen weddings every year, maybe more. Michelle, more?
You're talking like a dozen a month.
Really, that many? Yeah.
In the summertime.
Yeah, so a lot of people like to get married at the lakes. We've created ceremonial pads so that they can have their wedding out on the ceremonial pad and then rent a ramada, and it works out well for them. A lot of reunions, company picnics, things like that. And then this is the big six right now at Watson Lake, which is it's not a problem, but we have to really evaluate these large scale events because Watson Lake is a public facility. We want to leave open to the public, and we do. But sometimes these larger events can squeeze a little bit of that. But again, they bring a lot of value. And the big six are the Pure Imagination Festival, which has been very successful.
Excuse me, Joe. Councilman Montoya has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe, I just actually wanted to call out some kudos to your department. I had a friend who tragically lost one of their daughter earlier this year, and they needed to organize a candlelight vigil very quickly. And you specifically, but I know that it wasn't just you; it was your department stepped up and did that. And I know that these are community resources, but it's just really. It's great to see how you guys step up for the community when that stuff comes up. So I just want to give you a little bit of kudos there.
Well, thank you. And again, for us, and I can speak for every one of those people sitting behind me there, it isn't just a job. We're part of the community too. So when things like that come up, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure we can make it as easy for them as possible. So thank you for that. The Antique Auto Club, which I believe is like on 36, 38 years that they've been out there, and it draws a lot of people. The 4th of July celebration, the Prescott Powwow, which is another big one, and the Highland Games, they've been going on for quite some time. Some of the accomplishments in the lakes and landscape, we poured new concrete sidewalks at Goldwater Lake, which needed to be done, and it may seem like a small thing, but it was 100 cubic yards.
Furworth has a question.
Yes.
Joe, I think the public wants to know, are we going to have 4th of July on 4th of July this year?
Definitely 4th of July will be on 4th of July. One of the things that we'll be bringing to council here in the near future is what we've done the last half a dozen years is contracted that service out. Staff feels like it might be a better served to be handled by the city. We feel like it has not been as family friendly as it could be, maybe not as cost effective as it could be for families. And so we've got some really good ideas on what we can do, but there would be a little bit more cost involved in that. So that's something that'll come forward. And thank you for that question. Yeah, but it will be on the 4th. Guaranteed. The concrete sidewalks at Goldwater Lake seems small, but it was 100 cubic yards that these guys poured. It was quite an endeavor and something that really needed to be done. Access to the lake is much, much better now. We installed a security fence along with Public Works to help secure the the upper Goldwater Dam. And then we opened the lower Goldwater Lake for public use, which has been great. It's been well visited. We get a lot of good compliments on it. We took the tact on that thing, and I say it a lot, but a light hand on the land, and I think we accomplished it. It was a nice hiking trail that connects around it, but we didn't, overdo it with things down there. There's a ramada down close to the shore, and there's some day use areas in there, but we had a pretty good palette to work from. We didn't need to reinvent the wheel and do a lot more there. So I'm really proud of the way it turned out. Downtown planners, again, are really important. I wanted to bring up the graffiti removal because it really has become a much bigger task for us to take care of it. So we take care of graffiti removal on city property and other even private properties around the city. It's gotten to the point now where we're getting about 30 or more graffiti tags a week that we have to take care of. So it's taken a lot of time. It's turned into almost about a half-time position just doing that. An example, we had to paint the side of a complete building by Mile High Middle School because there had been a bunch of graffiti that went up overnight that was, let's just say, a little frightening for a lot of the students attending the school. And so I'm literally within 2 hours, my guys were out there and had that painted, actually matched the paint, which can be difficult to do when you're talking about a private building here, but it's a public facing building that if you leave that up, it just just propagates more of that type of thing. So that's become an issue. Unfortunately, we're working as hard as we can to stay up on it, and doing as much as we can with lighting and whatnot to help cut that down, but it's definitely something.
Councilman Montoya.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Joe, I know in my neighborhood I've personally removed some graffiti over by Taylor Hicks, and then was walking my neighborhood and saw that someone had gone back and redone additional graffiti, unfortunately. So I'll be out there this weekend scrubbing it off, just because I know that it takes a community to kind of look out for things like that. And I know I could just as easily call you guys, but I also can scrub it off myself sometimes if it's easy enough to do. But I guess my question for you is, do you think it's, given the uptick we're seeing this, and I do think that this is something that kind of sends a message about the kind of community that we have, and it's one of those, to me, it's a broken window type thing where if we let graffiti kind of go unaddressed, it mars the sense of community that people feel in neighborhoods. Do you think it's worth looking at in future budget allocations to kind of attribute a little bit more staff time to that? Or do you think we need to wait and see still and see if this trend continues?
That's a great question. It's all about level of service, right? And the broken window analogy is correct. If you leave it there, there's going to be more. So it is something that we probably need to talk about. And because you as the policymakers make those decisions, but I think I can speak for you that we want to stay proactive on that. I think one of the best examples of that, if you guys remember a number of years ago, the Masonic building got tagged up at the very top. And within a matter of hours, I mean, we had the street blocked off and we had a ladder truck from the fire department. I mean, all hands on deck. This was one where we actually had to strap off with straps to be able to get how they got the graffiti up there. They must have been some kind of a gymnast or something. But anyway, everybody stepped up and got it done. But that's what we have to do in order to be the kind of community we want to be, right?
Thank you.
Next division is our Trails and Natural Parklands division. A lot of work's been going on here. Yep.
Mayor? I think that's an important, bringing that item up is an important item to kind of keep in mind from a council perspective. These kinds of level of service discussions are going to be very important as you kind of consider what you want to consider as your priorities going forward. Graffiti is a citywide issue. It's one that you need eyes and ears out there, and you need somebody who's dealing with it, and ideally, but it comes with some costs to do that. And to kind of answer your question, Councilmember Montoya, I think that there is some need if that's the level of service this council wants to provide. If a 24-hour turnaround on identified graffiti is a desire, that's direction we need in order to be able to understand how to build the programs for you.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a shout out to Amy Bonney and the police department. We had a very prolific tagger here a couple of years ago. And it was distinctive in his style. So fortunately, with a little investigation, they identified who that person was and they caught him. So that's why it's important to respond pretty promptly before they continue to proliferate. And coordinating with the police department when you have somebody of that ilk that wants to indicate their presence throughout the city, we've got to be able to respond to it quickly.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Mayor. We do work closely with the police department, and there's a procedure for us before we cover up any graffiti to document what it is, because if you have the same person tagging, it can become a felony after a certain amount of damage is done rather than a misdemeanor. So we do work with our police department, and they're great to work with. So thank you for bringing that up. Trails and Natural Parklands, we've done a lot here over the last few years. With the purchase of Glassford Hill, we've got some goals that we want to do. We've got a meeting with our partners in Prescott Valley and Yavapai County on January 4th to start talking about, now that we've got through this first part of the purchase, how do we want to incorporate that? So we'll start that process. Again, planning for the Granadell's Gateway Park, which is ongoing. completing the Circle Trail. I always say the Circle Trail is connected but not complete because there's some areas, and this is one, the Stringfield Ranch agreement that we have with the developer there will allow us to go through Stringfield Ranch rather than there's one portion of that Circle Trail that does go on paved roads right now, and this will eliminate that. So that's ongoing as we speak. Connecting the Peavine Trail to Chino Valley. We are all the way up to state trust land and working with Brian Sparks, our real estate administrator, and the land department in getting an easement through that state land. And once we're through that, we're connected then to our partners in Chino Valley. So that's real close. A couple months ago, 45 days ago, I brought you guys a trailhead, a participating agreement with Prescott National Forest to build a White Spar trailhead. And so we're working on the pricing for that right now. That's going to be fully funded by the Prescott National Forest. We're just going to be the tool to get it built. We want to update, and we do continue to update the 2009 Open Space Master Plan with priorities. A lot of that work has been done, but there's still some things on there. I already talked about, complete the planning related to Glassford Hill. We have a project that we're working on right now with Yavapai County and SIMPO and the Arizona State Parks for a grant for constructing a trailhead at Pioneer Parkway. This is a trailhead that will facilitate equestrian use. That is one part of our trail system and trailheads that I think is not as well served as we would hope it would be, and this would be a great opportunity. We can get horse trailer parking in this, and again, through a partnership with the county participating, SIMPO participating, as well as Arizona State Parks and Trails through a grant, it'll be an economical type project as well. And then this last one is the White Spar Trailhead, which will be the trailhead for the Bean Peaks Trailhead system. It's a downhill flow trail system that Chris has been working with the Prescott National Forest on, and it's a phenomenal project. This is one I was talking about outdoor recreation infrastructure. This will be a piece of that outdoor recreation infrastructure that people will come from all over to experience because it's fairly unique. And then again, we want to manage that trail system to be safe and enjoyable. We want to continue to, maintain that and put signage up as needed to keep everything in line. And I think that's it on that, unless anybody had any questions on that.
Joe, when do you plan on having some long-term planning for the Glassford Dells Regional Park? I know that Prescott Valley's kind of moving forward with their side of the hill pretty rapidly. But we want to make sure that we coordinate that and the public is able to kind of expect what type of amenities and how they're going to be able to utilize and visit that area.
Yes, Mayor, good question. My understanding from the city manager or town manager in Prescott Valley is that they're just wrapping up the committee that they put together, and the committee's coming forward with some recommendations soon, within the next few weeks. So I'm hopeful that at our January meeting we can kind of figure out where they kind of landed with that, so we can we want this to be just like our partners in Prescott National Forest, where you don't know whether you're on a City of Prescott trail or a Prescott National Forest trail. We want to have that commonality. So I'm really looking forward to that part. As you know, Mayor, and you were involved, the purchase was a big part of this, and we needed to focus on that. Now our next task is to really kind of work on how we want to see that space utilized. So that'll be coming soon.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask a quick question. I know, Joe, you've been here quite a long time, so just for my benefit, since I wasn't following this, but under your organizational structure, did you always have fleet manager under recreation? Or is that something fairly new?
Fairly new. Mayor Pro Tem can tell me probably 5 or 6 years ago, when Michael Lamar came in as city manager, one of the things he wanted to do was consolidate some of the departments. And it made sense with my construction background and Mr. Legler's can do anything kind of a deal. It made a little sense. It doesn't, from when you look at recreation services, it doesn't make much sense. But when you look at the people, the key people, and the fact that, you know, we've got people like Justin Hill, who's the fleet manager that's got tons of experience. It's really all about managing those resources. So yeah, so about 5-6 years ago, we did that.
Yeah. So how many people do you employ in the recreation department between the two under the whole structure?
We have 58 full-time positions.
Okay. The other question I had, and then I'll let you go, is in the budget on in the fiscal year 2021-22, and then you go to fiscal year 22-23, that was quite a jump. Was there a monumental purchase during that year that?
Yes, there was.
And what was that?
And that was the Storm Ranch purchase.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering how we got from 8 to 13. I had guessed that, but I just wasn't sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I just have a question about the remnants of the pronghorn herd on Glassford Hill. Are you taking them into consideration with your plans? Because I saw a picture posted by some Yavapai Hills residents of a pretty robust, nice-looking group of animals. And I know that at one time they were moved, and they were the remnant was expected to die off after they only live 8 years. But it seems like they seem to be adapting pretty well. Any comments about the herd?
Yeah, Councilwoman Rusing, there is a pretty significant herd in there and on the other side of Highway 89. So one of the things that this has created is a much better wildlife corridor, especially with the Glassford Hill purchase. So we'll be cognizant of that. Again, back to partnerships, we work with our partners at Game and Fish to see how we want to manage the resource so that it doesn't have negative impacts on, you know, flora and fauna and whatever. So that's certainly something we'll consider as we go through with our planning and everything else.
Thank you. It's always thrilling to see the pronghorns.
Yes. Just briefly, some of the accomplishments. So we're now up to about 140 miles of city trails. And what's interesting about that, as I mentioned earlier, with the trail counters, we continue to see increased visitation from that, increased use of the trails, even though we build more infrastructure. That tells me that we're doing something right, and it's not time to hit the brakes yet, but to look for opportunities. Chris has been really busy out in the Granite Dells on the Storm Ranch with some phenomenal trails. If you guys haven't been out there, it's really turned out well. The trails that are in there, some are highly technical and some are not so much. The trail down by Elizabeth Creek, which was just completed by the Over the Hill gang 2-3 months ago, is phenomenal. It's an easy hike, but it's got a lot of scenery in there, follows the creek, so the vegetation is pretty interesting. So great opportunities in there. Chris has just finished 3 miles of the Bean Peaks trail system, and then we've got professional trail builders are building some of the downhill part of that, so they're moving along well on that. I'd mentioned before, we've built 3 miles of that Peavine Trail towards Chino. The Over the Hill gang, such a diverse group they are, constructed a sunshade classroom for the Community Nature Center. These guys can do anything. But anyway, that was kind of nice to be able to set up those classrooms for the kids that come out there during the school year. Granite Creek Corridor project was completed thanks to the approvals from City Council and participation from everybody to get that done. It turned out really, really nice, and I'm really proud of it. This is about 10,000 man hours. Again, about approximately 2,000 is a full-time position. So the Over the Hill gang puts in the equivalent of at least 5 full-time people in the work that they do. Been, like I say, working on a lot of the trail system out in the Dells, especially. I talked a little bit about the Glassford Dells project. I was really happy that the state saw the value in it and allocated $1.75 million to us and the same amount to Prescott Valley to help with the funding. That's why it went from, went down to less than $700,000 for that almost 1,000 acres. So I think it came out to about $300 an acre for the taxpayers. And then we did do the Storm Ranch negotiations and sale. That was what Mayor Pro Tem mentioned before, and that's a big part. That's what I call the donut hole in the middle of all of that. Glassford Hill and Watson Lake. That's a great accomplishment for us to have that. And again, I'm not going to go through all these, but we live on partnerships. This is just some of them. Even when it comes to our fleet department, we work with Prescott Valley. We work on their motorcycles. We work on Chino Valley's motorcycles. Everything we do, we're always looking for partnership opportunities, and we've got some really great partners. And again, as one of our strategic initiatives is to continue that and nurture that and continue that progress. And I get to jump off here. Tim
Mayor
can
Pro
take
Tem.
Hey, Joe, can I ask you another question then on that? After the Storm Ranch purchase, in that budget, it reflects a purchase just about every year. What is our, once we stop buying everything we can buy, what is the base cost or budget for your department? Do you have one?
For just specifically for managing open space, is that what you're getting at?
Well, just the department costs without purchases. If you're referring to just like operations costs,
operations
yeah, we can get that for you. I don't know that we have it available right now, but I'm sure that Mr. Woodfill sitting in the back, we can certainly take out the one-time purchases and just share with you what the operating budgets are. And I know he does that during the budget process, but we can get that to you. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've enjoyed every one of our purchases that we've made, and they've benefited the city in so many ways for, the ecotourism in particular, but I enjoy it. I think we all do. But I was just wondering, once we have stopped the purchases, what is our base cost? I mean, if you look at our recreation services expenditure summary from fiscal year 21-22 all the way to 23-24, we went from $8,412,000 and change up to $18 million. So I'm assuming, 60% of that is probably purchases. Is that right? Or I'm guessing.
Mayor Pro Tem, at least. Really, a lot of that fluctuation is driven by capital projects, whether it's purchases or other capital projects within the department. Our operating budget, if you look at that, I think the second slide, our operating budget is actually down about $100 and some thousand from the previous year. And then it's specifically when we talk about, operating budgets pertaining to open space and trails, it's really very minimal. We have one full-time person, which is Chris. We have the Over the Hill gang. If the trails are constructed properly, there's very little maintenance that needs to go with that. So as far as the operating budget goes and how much of that is allocated towards those purchases in those properties, it's very, very little. But we can break that out for you.
Well, I'm just curious because, there's going to come a day where we won't have a lot of stuff to purchase. And then where do we get into that line of maintaining it all? And just curious for budget purposes.
Yeah, so like I say, it's very, very minimal. I think the reality of the situation is we've probably done most of the big purchases that we will do. And again, trying to be strategic about how those were purchased. Storm Ranch was important because it added that contiguous nature for Glassford Hill and all that. But again, as far as our operating budget, for example, adding Storm Ranch, that 500 acres, is negligible to our operating expense. Negligible. I mean, we're talking a few $1,000s, really not much at all.
Okay. Would it be fair to say, I noticed the 5 years before we were somewhere in the $8 million range. That was before all the big purchases? Would it be fair to say that we're somewhere around that? Just out of, here comes the big boss. We'll find out.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in our budget book. I'm looking at page 195 of the budget book. Recreational services operating budget in the 24 budget is $5,150,000.
5 million. So.
$5,150,000, yes.
And was that established like going back several years? I'm sorry.
In 23 is projected at 5.4, so it's actually down in 24.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, there's 2-3 years of history there.
Right.
be glad to email you that document.
Yeah, no, I was just like, as I said, I was just trying to figure it out once we've made all the big purchases. What is our base cost of doing business?
Right.
Yeah.
And again, we went, also, if you look at the slides that we did as part of the 24 budget, we had that separation on there as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Gambogi.
Joe, I've probably lived in 15 different communities in 7 different states and 2 foreign countries. I've played the North and South course. I played softball on the fields. During COVID, I hiked the entirety of the Circle Trail, and I've been to all the lakes. And I've got to say that what you and your staff and the Over the Hill gang have created is a crown jewel of recreational opportunities in the entire world. So thank you all.
Thank you. So I'll turn it over to our Deputy Director, Tim Legler, to talk
Council-
about fleet and facilities.
Councilmember Rusing.
Oh,
Wait, we're not quite done with you.
Okay.
I would just like to compliment you on the municipal golf course. That is quite the amenity that many people enjoy here. And also, I would like to comment that you make sure that all these wonderful recreational facilities are accessible to people of all ages and of all physical abilities. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, if you guys are done with it, I'm gonna get started here. I just wanted to add something, Mayor Pro Tem. A lot of the budget too, just looking at a quick list, there's about $4 million in capital from HVAC replacements to this building. Stuff like that also flows through that budget.
Hopefully that's a one-time charge.
I hope so too. We're going to start off with the fleet services. Strategic goals, reduce the average age of the city's fleet through the budgeting process. We recently met with city manager on this. This is a challenge. We've kicked this can down the road far too long. I think our average age is about 12 years. Right now we're trying to reduce it. We've been fortunate the past couple of years and replaced a lot of vehicles, a lot of police cars and public works and everything else. So it's working. We just got to keep funding it. Development, replacement cycle plan to ensure that we keep that function, the functions optimally. Manage the fleet in a manner to ensure vehicles or equipment are dependable and safe to operate. The big one on this is like fire trucks, snow plows, police department. There's a lot of maintenance required. Police cars run 24/7 essentially on their patrols. Provide monthly billing and work order information to each department. This is something we started doing a while back so that the departments understood what is that cost of keeping their vehicles on the road and keep them running. Accomplishments, implemented barcode system with the parts warehouse. That's a big thing for us because until recently we knew what we had, but did we really know? So this way it creates better tracking and better billing to the customers for the parts that they use. Successfully completed annual parts warehouse inventory. This is a huge thing. There's a lot of inventory. How much is the inventory? About $350,000 in parts sitting in the warehouse. With the help of the Parks Division, because again, we're just one big team, all the fleet bays were thoroughly cleaned and organized in the summer of 23. This was a huge thing. It's never been done. So we got all these guys sitting here and the ones that are out working right now together and did a massive cleaning. Completed organized labeling of all the parts on the shelves and the materials. Key objectives, streamline communication with other departments regarding service timelines and encourage the use of ticketing requests for service needs. That's really so that we know what's going on, because if you tell somebody verbally, this is what I need, 3 more people do it, somebody's going to get forgotten there. Continue proactive preventative maintenance on all snowplows and equipments in preparation for winter seasons. This is something we just went through. We bring all the snowplows in, completely dressed out, go through them, make sure everything's working in good condition. Utilize the parts tracking software more efficiently for reordering and tracking purposes. Implement a more thorough record of vehicles in each department. So service records, drivers, operators, depending on the vehicle, depends on the need. There's a familiar picture.
Councilwoman Fruworth.
Tim, Ted and I had the opportunity just about a month and a half ago or so to come through your fleet maintenance garage and your back room. I felt like we were in your closets, and I can't say how impressed I was that every shop that we would ever want to take our cars to would be as neat and organized and clean as yours is. So hats off to your entire staff.
Thank you. We'll move on to facilities maintenance division. So strategic goals here: implement HVAC replacement program throughout the city. We finally got a good inventory of what we have. There's about 60 units that are over the age of 15 years, which is the normal lifespan. That's a huge capital expense. This year we just finished up the replacement of about $100,000 at the library of HVAC equipment. That's led to more problems. They're just old units, and trying to keep them going, keep it hot, keep it cold, has been a challenge, but we're trying to stay on top of that. So it's our goal to basically become more energy efficient with that stuff. We completed a kitchen replacement and upgrade at the dispatch center. That's huge. That place is staffed 24/7, so there's a lot of use there. We completed upgrades to the buildings at the police department, including the training room and then some hallways and the lobby and stuff. Library HVAC updates, those are ongoing. Working with all departments to budget and prioritize capital building projects. So we've started meeting with departments to talk about what they want, what they see, what is a need versus a want, and then what we need to upgrade. Could be lights, getting the old ones out, getting LEDs more efficient in there. And then that also ties into the HVAC system. So we started, PD's our second one that we've done the computer-based climate control for energy savings. That way people can't just go in and kick it up to 80 degrees and then walk away and it stays at that until somebody turns it back down. Converting lighting systems in all city buildings to be more efficient. Pursue green energy initiatives, so solar, EV charging stations. Really, that's kind of where we can do it. I know people brought up parking garage. There's a lot of problems with doing EV charging there because of the fire suppression and whatnot. Key objectives is streamline daily ticketing responses to maximize day-to-day operations, ensure effective communication with other departments regarding facilities requests. And that's really just following back up with them, letting them know what we did or didn't do. Prioritize.
And I just wanted to interject something. That when it comes to facilities maintenance, we self-perform way more work than we've ever done. Every year, we do more and more. The skill sets that we have within the department allow us to do that. I mean, for example, this podium right here was built by this guy. We didn't go buy it from wherever. Same thing with the valances on the windows. So we really take pride in self-performing that. If we get a plugged sewer line, we're going to go take care of it. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think we're going to talk about some of the other work that we self-perform.
Yeah, the sewer lines.
Councilman Gambogi.
Hey, Tim, with APS running around the state making sweetheart deals on EV stations, why would we get involved with that?
Let me answer that. So actually, their program has kind of ended. I did check in with them. We do have an opportunity through Gallup and Ford has offered to, they're going to purchase some EV stations and they would donate them to the city of Prescott. We're just trying to work out the infrastructure and where they might go and trying to figure all that out. But my understanding is that the APS programs have kind of sunsetted on some of that. But again, we do have a private partner that's willing to help with that. So we're looking into that right now.
So, Joe, would those be level 2 stations or level 1 or 3?
I'm not sure what the levels mean. These would be the quick charge, a 30-minute charge station.
Those are level 3s.
Is that what they are? Okay. Yep. Yes.
They cost about $1 million. The federal government is offering about an $800,000 subsidy, but the private investor has to come up with the other $200,000. And of course, they do impact your electrical bills. I know there's some concern in the legislature about potentially charging those EVs that want to use a fast charger to pay a certain number cents per kilowatt hour. Otherwise, they have a huge impact on our roads. Their average sedan weighs over 700 pounds more than a gas-powered sedan, and they don't have to pay for their impact. So that's one of the concerns, is maybe having some of these fast charge stations charge a user fee, and then have that user fee be able to go to the municipality or the county to be able to maintain the roads that they impact. So I think that's probably something that probably needs to be considered if we do proceed with any of these fast charging stations in the city.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mayor. And we understand those complexities, and the ones we had talked about have credit card readers on them where they would pay for their usage. But like any of these things, we have to be careful, and ultimately it's a policy decision that we come to you. But we're just doing the background work on it right now. But the points you brought up are relevant.
Okay, so move on to prioritize proactive responses to facilities requests, building maintenance and custodial needs. The entire city, 80 buildings. Imagine all the needs and what everybody thinks their priority is. Encourage open communication with the departments to improve facilities requests, tickets, etc. Continue desire to learn and adapt to the ever-changing, evolving needs, requests the cities and its facilities. So new technology, material and equipment, grant opportunities, and then trends. So in facilities maintenance, some of you probably know, but over the past year, we were trying to get roofs sealed from leaking, and it's been a big struggle. Getting quotes, getting contractors to show up. So I had a wild idea, and the guys went with me on it. We bought a roofing machine and started doing them ourselves. It's saved a lot of money. We've sealed up roofs that we've been fighting leaks in for years just by getting this machine. It's definitely paid for itself over and over. Some accomplishments: the third floor of this building is done. The library heating, ventilation, air conditioning improvements, police department improvements, so conference room remodel, community service records workstation replacement, new carpet. Their carpet there is probably 20, 30 years old. It's needed to be replaced. We had several HVAC units we had to replace over there, just went down and weren't repairable. We changed them over to the new card lock system. We did one of their buildings, the main headquarters, their roof leaked for years, and that was one of the first roofs we did, and it's sealed up now. No more leaks. Report writing room remodel. Downstairs they have where the officers do the report writing, and it was just tables put in there with computers. We dressed that up for them and helped them get that done. So I talked about the HVAC inventory we got completed. We self-performed over 30,000 square feet of roof repairs with this machine. Grace Sparks Activity Center, the Flagstone room went through a remodel. HVAC's important because there it is inventoried again. Completed the citywide card lock program. We're about 75% complete, and that's all city facilities to be on the card lock system, so we're not issuing out keys. Better security of our buildings, just better management of them. And I'm going to turn it back to Joe.
I'm back. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about Antelope Hills and our partnership there. So obviously we want to improve the playing conditions out there. I always talk about the golf course is a little bit like farming. You know, you can have a great crop and then hail comes in and it wipes it out. And then by the same token, you can have a great year and everything works out well. But we've certainly had years where the course is burning up at the end of June, and we're fighting that, and then 2 weeks later we're flooding. So, but this is a good year that we've had so far. We're about $200,000 over our budget projection for revenues at this point in time, which is halfway through our fiscal year. So we're headed in a positive direction. That's the good news. The bad news, and it's not really bad news, is that over the years there was a lot of deferred maintenance that happened, older irrigation systems. We've been aggressively, and thank you, Council, for helping support us in those efforts to update those things and get those on a par. And I really feel strongly that once we continue along the path of being aggressive with those improvements, we can get to a point where we'll be actually making money at the golf course rather than supplementing that deferred maintenance. We've got some opportunities to upgrade some cart paths, which we can do mostly internally. We always look at our water use, whether it's, turf reduction or more efficient irrigation, which we've done a lot of that irrigation stuff over the last 2 to 3 years. One of the things that we're dealing with right now that we need, and I'll be bringing this to council right after the first of the year, is we've got some frontline mowers and maintenance equipment at the golf course that some of it's from 2007. It's old equipment that needs to be replaced. That's going to help us with downtime and help us be more efficient. So I'll be bringing that back to you. We feel really good about where the quality of our food and service is at the Manzanita Grill and the Centennial Center. That's been well received. If you haven't been out for the fish fry on Friday nights, you should go out. Best fish fry in Prescott. We have the father and son golf tournament, which I believe is over 60 years old now, which sells out in like an hour. I mean, this thing, people come from all over the state for this, and we want to continue that relationship. As always, we want to increase revenues and reduce expenses. Food costs have been one of the things we've struggled with ever since COVID. We can't get a good handle on food costs. They go here and there and everywhere. It's been difficult, but we're staying on it. Again, our key objective would be to replace some of that outdated equipment so that we can get ourselves up to where we need to be. Same thing with the irrigation system. We want to continue to, review trends in the golf industry all the time, ways to make the game play quicker, any kind of technologies that can help us stay at the forefront. And we have gone, in 2014, we did 56,000 rounds out there. We run about 90,000 rounds a year out there now. It's almost to the point where it's too much play in order to keep up with it. And we'll be looking at the revenues, and I believe I have a bullet point here that we're going to be evaluating our free structures on a quarterly basis. We want to make golf affordable for our citizens, but we also want to not have it be a drain on the general fund. So there's a balance in there somewhere. So we do that a couple different ways. One is we have a card, a value card that you can buy if you're a regular golfer that will keep the fee structure down a little bit, whereas people coming up from the valley or whatever that don't play there very often might pay a little bit more. And then again, we just really want to keep on an aggressive path with that 5-year capital plan that we've laid out to catch up with that deferred maintenance.
Yeah, Joe, and I remember you and I met with that kind of national consultant, and he was mentioning the fact that very few municipal courses are gaining rounds. And we've gained a substantial number of rounds even since we met with him. I think at that time we were around 58,000. Now we're up to 90. I mean, that's a huge increase, but it also is an example of how much the community utilizes that golf course, how important it is to them. We have colleges that play competitive rounds there too, and it's got a really strong reputation for the quality of play and the quality of the course. So upgrading some of these additional areas I think are needed, and especially with the irrigation systems on the south course, I think it's all going to really pay off well. And I know it's a tough ongoing job, not only just maintaining what you have, but being able to improve it. But I think, as I said before, when people come into Prescott Regional Airport, it's one of the first things they see. And if they see a quality golf course, it makes a really strong first impression. Councilmember Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to follow up on that, what you suggested, Joe, about kind of reviewing the fee structure. And I'm wondering if there's room to create more of a delta between what people who are local are playing. I know I've talked to, and I think I'll say everyone I've talked to locally has said that, the rounds here are pretty affordable, it seems, at the municipal course. I think if you want to play golf and play on a good course, the course that we have is probably the best one to do so consistently and affordably. But I wonder if there's not a little bit more of a delta we can create for folks where, again, I think if we're having record rounds, that means that there are a lot of people potentially from the Phoenix area that are coming up here to get away from the heat and golf somewhere where it's nice. And I wonder if there's just not more of a delta, and if you have a metric for kind of looking at a way to do that.
Yes, so Councilman Montoya, that's the Advantage card that I referred to. Kind of keeps the locals or the core golfers a little bit more affordable. But it's also kind of a balancing act too, because when those people come up from Phoenix, they're playing golf at the golf course, but they're also going to buy some gas, and they're also going to eat lunch, and they're also going to spend money in the community that wouldn't otherwise be there if the golf course wasn't there. Mayor, you'll probably remember, because I know you were on council when we did the economic impact study, and it showed about a $7 million annual economic impact from not only the revenues, but all of the things that happen with visitation, the father and son tournament, and all the spending that it creates in the community. So good points and understood.
And I would just say I trust you guys to kind of run the numbers and do it right. So I appreciate it, and I know that there are a lot of folks who've reached out to me and said that they do appreciate the fact that those who want to golf and do so at a quality course can do it so relatively affordably at our course. And I think, to Councilmember Rusing's point, it's a very nice amenity that we maintain.
Thank you. And so accomplishments, we did get new golf carts in January of 2023. We typically get 5 years out of them. Last time we stretched it to 6. I think, with the cart barn restoration that we did, we poured concrete in the cart barn where it was dirt before, and golf cart path improvements. We might be able to stretch that out to 6 or 7, hopefully, because that can be a pretty large expense. We have been aggressive again on our irrigation improvements. We put in all new satellite systems on both courses. We, I think, improved the golf course conditions considerably. There's still more work to do, but we've come a long way. This last year, we resodded a lot of the tee areas on the north course, which definitely needed to happen. So we've gotten that done. And then we did quite a few upgrades at the Antelope Hills restaurant as well. New paint, new carpet, HVAC, and new kitchen equipment. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll turn it over to Adam Camacho, our park superintendent, to talk about the forestry division.
Good morning, Mayor, or good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. Adam Camacho, Recreation Services Superintendent. So when we got word that forestry was going to be making our way this fiscal year, we went arms wide open. We welcomed them all. They joined us at our already packed parks maintenance shop. We cleared space for them. And we just knew that they were going to be a big positive asset in our department. Because one, we are basically an oversized landscape crew, and they fit us perfectly. So some of our strategic goals, maintain a healthy urban forestry open space within the city of Prescott. That's something that Chief Holger and Conrad Jackson is really pushing on their Prescott Fire Department side of is being a fire adaptive community. So that's something that we put in our goal as well. Also increase grant funding for operational needs. There's a lot of money out there for grants. We're chasing all kinds of grants, partnerships with Prescott National Forest to help with our operational budget costs with that, as well as vegetation management throughout the city of Prescott. We do a lot of work outside city limits, but we want to focus in on our community and the city of Prescott itself too. So that's something that we're focusing on is internal vegetation management inside the city. Assist the Prescott Fire Department on leading the city of Prescott towards fire adaptive community, like I mentioned before. Our key objectives, increase grant funding for operational needs. It goes hand in hand with the strategic goal because that's very important on how we operate. Participate with the Prescott Fire Department in increasing public education and awareness on what becoming a fire adaptive community means. For our part, that's mainly pushing our brush chipping program. So anyone in the city of Prescott who is a resident, they can do their own trimming around their own residence and place their piles outside on the curb line. And all they have to do is submit a ticket online, and we come every Friday and we come chip those brush or any kind of chippings that they need, and we haul them out ourselves. Commitment to wildfire risk reduction, that's what we are. We're fuels mitigation, and we want to eliminate any kind of wildfire risk. Maintain and strengthen our partnership with the Prescott National Forest to capitalize on grant funding for fuels reduction in the Prescott National Forest. Like I said, that's important for our grant funding. So next slide. Thanks, Tim. Services we offer, fuels mitigation and the wildland urban interface. So like I said, we're really pushing fuels mitigation inside city limits, which is wildland urban interface. So our crews are working Granite Creek corridor, around the lakes, up in Goldwater. So we're really focusing on within the city limits on that one. Like I said, residential chipping program. We roughly chip about 80 residential chipping piles per month right now at the moment. Hazard tree mitigation citywide. It's something that we handled prior to forestry coming in. We handled either contracting it out or our parks or lakes and landscape team did themselves. But now that we have forestry, we're able to all work together and take care of those hazard trees. In addition, we do snow removal efforts, and I'm talking all of our divisions, not just forestry on this one. So we handle all city facilities and fire stations. So that's clearing sidewalks, parking lots, and we plow down on the streets too whenever we're going facility to facility. Some of our trends is grant opportunities for fuels mitigation, which includes the city of Prescott and Prescott National Forest land. Residential chipping program, requests increasing, citizens benefiting from the program, making their land fire wise, which is why we're trying to promote that fire adaptive community. The accomplishments, since they've been over to our department this fiscal year, they came over with about 5 employees. So we hired 8 additional full-time temp employees to build a successful forestry crew. And that just helps us with grant work, timeline projects, because grants are very important, but they come with a timeline. If we can't finish that, then that money goes back, and it does not look good for future grant applications. The Kiwanis grant, we're maybe a month out right now, but the acres mitigated right now are 40 acres completed. Mission Hills subdivision, which is right off Willow Creek Road. We're doing fields reduction, and acres mitigated is about 10 acres, and that's all hand thinned. It was very rough terrain for the guys, hand thinned, and then issued some burn permits for those. Heritage Park and Willow Lake, we did a mastication retreat program there. So Miles and his crew go out there and with some mastication and flail mowing and weed whackers, they're knocking out those 10 acres. The Goldwater TSI grant, it's partially completed. It was a multi-year grant. Current acres mitigated is 100 out of 503 acres. Expected completion date is, 12/31 of next year. This is a quote that Joe can explain.
This is one of my favorite quotes. You know, I guess especially because I've gotten older, but society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit under. So that concludes our presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Well, I appreciate the fact, Adam, that you had a mastication retreat. I don't think I've ever heard of that before, but I'm sure it was a lot of fun. Knowing that we have this community restitution program now generating substantial number of hours to reduce fuels, especially internally. I mean, I've heard of a lot of complaints about how much weed we have growing in the city right away after usually the end of summertime. And then, of course, by the time we get into winter, it kind of takes care of itself. But it's so obvious, and all it takes is one cigarette butt or something else, and before you know it, you've got a fire that you've got to respond to very quickly. So if we can kind of prioritize maybe some of that community restitution to reduce the fuel load in those weed-infested areas within the city, it helps you, and it helps our new city judge utilize appropriate resources, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
I just first wanted to thank our folks for being here and for all the work that they do. I do want council to know that if there are things that council would like us to look at, now's a good time to let us know some of those things. But even more so, one thing I wanted to point out is that when we talk about all of these various areas that are in the Parks and Recreation area, two areas stand out from the standpoint of that they provide citywide services, meaning they provide services for all departments, and that was our fleet and facilities side, right? So they take care of all of our facilities that the city owns and all of the fleet that the city owns. And as I've mentioned before to this council, that that I do foresee some challenges in our general fund going forward, based upon our current the increased costs. Our expenditures are outpacing our revenues, basically, as we look at our overall 5-year forecast. And those are some pretty significant areas where, at least in my experience, I've been seeing the need outpaces the revenues or the available funds, both in fleet and related to all of our facilities. We have significant facility needs across our city, where we have renovations and repairs, and we've talked about roofs and HVACs, and even just our fire stations need some renovation, things like that, where I see those needs as continuing to be significant in the near term. So I just want council to be aware that these folks here have done a lot to try to mitigate costs through the talents that they have and the ability that they have to manage a lot of these things. But I want council just to be aware, when we're talking budget and coming up into the next year of policy decision making, these are some areas that I think are going to be tightly squeezed.
Do we have any public comment?
We do, Mayor Ralph Hess.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ralph Hess, Prescott. I'd like to refer back to an exchange between Mayor Good and Mr. Baines earlier during this presentation, in which you were discussing Glassford Dells Regional Park and the progress that Prescott Valley is making with regard to its plans for that park. I've been looking at the Prescott Valley website, and in that on that website, they have a map indicating that approximately 100 acres, or maybe more than 100 acres, but at least 100 acres, are planned to be active recreation, which appears to be in conflict with the intergovernmental agreement among Yavapai County, the city of Prescott, and Prescott Valley, which sets forth that the purpose of the agreement and the Glassford Dells Regional Park is to have a park of passive recreation. And the parts on the map, unless they've changed it, this was from the October 25th planning group that they have, is that, let's see, just named as active recreation areas, 44 acres. They also have 28 acres that are designated to serve the mountain bike lift that they're planning to have to the top of Glassford Hill. I know that this is a concern among some of the Prescott Valley people with whom I've spoken, and it's a concern of mine. I mean, if the intergovernmental agreement provides for passive recreation, is the city going to agree to allow Prescott Valley to include at least 100 acres of active recreation? Another portion that I think is included in that is a lodging and recreation area, which is designated as 21 acres. So have you considered that? Are you deciding whether to take a position on that? And are you going to challenge Prescott Valley to be consistent and comply with the purpose of the intergovernmental agreement to restrict this park to passive recreation? Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
All right, if there are no additional questions or concerns, I want to thank Parks and Recreation, Facilities, and Forestry, and Fleet Management, and everything else you guys do over there. That's a pretty broad scope of responsibilities, and it's something that I think the community sees almost every day in some way or another. So the fact that we continue to get accolades and the public telling us how what a great job you guys do, then we just have to be able to make sure that with the revenues and the costs kind of balance out, and like the old saying goes, do a little more with less. But some of these things, you got to pay the price for it. And I think some of the fleet costs and some of the other component costs that we've seen escalate so dramatically in the last couple of years are starting to come down again. I think supply chain is starting to balance itself out. There's even some components that have gone even back before the pandemic caused those to really increase. So let's hope we can take some advantage of that. All right, this section of our study session is concluded, and then we'll move on to item 3B, presentation and discussion regarding business licenses in the city of Prescott. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of a potential business license program for the city of Prescott. Over the course of my time here, I have heard from a number of council members an interest in us potentially considering going forward with a business license program, primarily in order to ensure that we have appropriate contacts for a number of different reasons that I'm going to let Tyler kind of go through, but primarily for a lot of the public safety, emergency communications, and some of the and some other things that are of an interest to the city and to the public as we look at our business community. I do have Tyler here today. He's going to talk a little bit about a framework that is potentially under consideration. Again, as a study session item, this is something where council's feedback and direction would be appreciated. If there is direction to move forward, we certainly can move a little further, continue to meet with stakeholders or look to meet with stakeholders related to this and flesh out the program in a little bit more detail. Or if not, then that certainly gives us the direction that we need. So I appreciate council's review of this. And Tyler, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thank you, City Manager, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tyler Goodman, Deputy City Manager. I know we're running a little short on time. We have about half an hour, so I'll try to be efficient in the presentation, but happy to take your input and questions as we go along. To start, we wanted to touch on some history about the recent past of the business license. The city did have one in effect it was approved in 2016. I believe it took effect January of 2017 and ended in 2019. And the reasons that the city at that time implemented a business license were several. The first being public safety, having good contact information for businesses. Even hazardous materials were identified on the previous application. Code compliance that had to do with fire, zoning, was the building in the right zone, occupancy, building safety, those types of things. Economic development, understanding business statistics, trend reports, who's here, what types of businesses do we have? We did have them mark a category of what type of business they were, for example. Tracking at that time vacation rentals and sober living homes. And the state around that time also took over the collection of the transaction privilege tax. So the city had, and cities throughout Arizona had some fear that we're losing the ability to understand who's transacting business in the city. We're not in charge of that. We don't collect. The enforcement is also with ADOR. So just trying to have an understanding of who's here, who's doing business in the city. And at the time, there was a lot of discussion about providing a robust business database, a place where either businesses who are looking to move in or businesses that exist here or others interested could understand who's doing business, what type of business, contact information, locations, a place where businesses could be found. At the time, the annual fee was $35, And there was a one-time inspection fee of $40, so $75 up front and then $35 every year after that. And at that time, the intake and processing was done by the Budget and Finance Department. Here are the results that the city had as of 2019, around the time it ended. And these are the categories that we licensed: businesses located inside the city, home-based businesses inside the city, commercial properties, special event vendors, contractors, and businesses located outside of the city. And we almost reached, we're just shy of about 5,000 there, licenses that were issued. But those were the categories, and those were the results after several years of having it implemented. So what about the inspections? Inspections were required for all businesses, including new and existing, except for home-based and commercial landlords. Those were the exception. The safety inspection mostly included fire elements: extinguishers, aisles, storage, access, electrical hazards, things that you would typically think public safety, right? If there's a lot of public interacting with this business, are they safe in doing so if there was ever a fire or incident? And the inspections occurred annually, and they would rotate geographically. There was a system to do that. A notice would be given to a business to say, we'll be there within this day, this range of days, this time, and we'll be inspecting your business. The past process to obtain a license, I broke this down into two because there's kind of two categories here. The new businesses would go through a lengthier process because we're looking at more things. They would apply. We would look at the building. We'd understand where they were. We'd look at zoning. There would be a safety inspection, and then it would be issued. And the goal was to do that within 2 weeks. And while I don't have in front of me exactly the average time it took, I can tell you it wasn't 2 weeks. It was much longer than that, especially with an uptake of a program like that with many thousands that are coming in pretty much at once. And then the other process for existing businesses and those special event vendors and out-of-city businesses would simply apply, have a very high-level review, and then have their business license issued. And we tried to do that within 3 days. Again, it was longer than that, but certainly not a long time for those that existed. So the question that I think everybody's wondering, why was it discontinued? There were conversations, presentations to council, discussions at that time. Really, I tried to boil it down into one slide for you. So there's a lot here, but I'll go through these. So first, the safety inspections could be completed without a business license program. And we currently have safety inspections that occur. They're not at every business or every occupation, but certainly those that are higher risk, those that draw more people, are inspected annually, as well as gathering places, schools, daycares, churches, things like that also are on the list for regular inspection. And then hazardous materials and alarm registrations are handled separately, so those have a separate process that are still in place. And business data and trends, we could find those in other ways. We discussed and found that through the Chamber of Commerce, the business directory, reports like Dun & Bradstreet, the Small Business Development Center, Yavapai College, and Placer, which we've had for the last couple of years, are all resources that can give us insight and intel into some data and trends. And then the regulation of sober living home, of course, that was taken over by the state. The city still has a piece of that.
Tyler, what's Placer AI?
Placer AI is a tool that we have with economic development. It's an ability to see, really generate information for businesses on traffic counts, competition, where they might best. So if a business is interested in coming to the city, we can generate some data and reports for them to say, this intersection would be great for you, or this general area of the city would be great for you. So it's not all encompassing, but it's a tool in the toolbox. About sober living homes, the city still has a piece of enforcement with that, with zoning. And so our zoning folks do look at that whenever a sober living home applies or registers with the state of Arizona. But otherwise, the state took over the licensing of sober.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Tyler, I had a question about the last bullet on here. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
That's okay.
The business database was not as robust or used as initially thought. Can you expound on that? Like, what was the thought that the database would be used for, and then what departments were looking at that, and what were the things that we didn't think we things that we thought we would get out of it, and what did we actually get out of it?
Yes, happy to touch on that. So at the time, like I mentioned, the idea was for a database that would be a tool for existing businesses, for businesses coming in, for economic development internally, and to understand who's doing business here, right? If memory serves correctly, it was more of a directory. It wasn't as interactive. It was mostly, here's the list and here's the data that came, as part of their application, a business that is. It was I would say it was a promise to the business community that we'd have something of value, a value added for them to go through this licensing process. It wasn't used in the sense that we thought it would be, and some could argue it's because it wasn't useful enough to want to be used. But we did track at the time, individual visits to it, and it wasn't very high. The traffic on that web page, it was on the city website, wasn't very high. There weren't a lot of unique users. And so overall, it became part of the reasons why, well, we're not providing much value here. It doesn't need to hang on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I would just like to make the point that the state does not license all sober living homes. There are many sober living homes that are unlicensed. In fact, down in Glendale, it's become a very big problem, and they're having to look at how they can help regulate the sober living homes. And the sober living home lobby is very powerful and very well funded, and they have the ear of the legislatures. So if we have a business license, we can require all sober living homes, licensed or unlicensed, to comply with our fire codes, health codes, safety codes. And that's the purpose of a business license, is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And I also must add, now we have a jail. Currently, the first phase of the jail is 125 beds, but at build out, they're planning 600 beds. And with the diversion programs that the jail offers, they're going to all come to our community and proliferate the sober living home. So we need to start looking at this business license now and get the program in place so that we can regulate and monitor these sober living homes. Thank you.
Proceed, Mayor.
No, I was just going to make a comment. I remember talking to Lars back during the first iteration of the business license, and I really felt that we had made a kind of a contract with the business community to provide some of this additional business-related data so that businesses that might want to locate here, maybe build a satellite facility or a new operation within their company, they could identify where their competition might be, what would be a good location to be able to effectively compete, etc. But the data that we were providing was so broad and so generalized that if I were a business manager looking to relocate, that information was almost worthless. So I felt that it was kind of a breach of our contract with the business community when we put that into effect. And now that we have some additional data sources, we don't have to figure out that we have to charge a higher fee to provide a service that we never provided. So if we have just a minimal licensing fee so that we have an idea of who's doing business here, where they are, that would be, I think, acceptable to the business community, our business community. I mean, I saw this report where we have 91 cities and towns throughout the state, and 57 of them, at least for the ones that we've been able to get responses from, do have a business license. And in most cases, they're pretty minimal. There are 9 in Yavapai County alone. Most of the nearby incorporated cities have one, other than ourselves and Dewey Humboldt. And I'm not making a knock on Dewey Humboldt. It's just that they don't have much business down there. So that's probably why they don't have a business license. So I think it's important for us to know who's doing business, and to reiterate Councilmember Rusing's comments about making sure that they're operating safely and they're, there are substantial benefit to the community at large and those people that utilize their businesses. I think now is a time for us to join almost 65% of all the cities and towns that responded to our survey to put some type of a business license into effect. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to echo everything that the mayor and Councilmember Kathy Rusing said. I actually have brought this to the forefront within weeks of being appointed to my seat on council. As a businesswoman, trying to come into a community with no data collection, and I've had just recently another situation where I've had a developer from Phoenix that I knew for many years call me up and chew me out in a very nice way that he didn't understand why the city couldn't have told him before he purchased the property for a storage unit that we had 10 storage unit applications out there currently. This is the kind of information businesses look for when they decide to expand into a community. That's just one of it. The sober living homes that Kathy referred to, I took a deep dive into that years ago. And I'm just going to say, as strongly as I can, if you are a city without a business license, you are a blind city. That proliferated under our noses. The only people that were affected by that were the people in the downtown area that chose to stand up and do something about that. I think had we had a license, by the time we reached 300 sober living homes, a flag should have gone up and somebody should have stopped to look at that, because the toll it took on the neighborhoods in the historic area was outrageous, and I lived there, I know. Not to mention our services, our police and fire. The amount of time that they spent at these homes was unbelievable, so much so that the taxpayer couldn't even get services at times. So that's just one example. But Tyler, I know we interrupted you because I looked ahead on your next slide. When we go into the reasons, business license research, it's all right here. General purpose is to ensure quality business activity by protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the people. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to let you finish, because you're going to back up everything I just said. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad that,
All right,
that you
so
read the
before
presentation.
you finish, Councilman Moore had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. It's really more of a comment than a question. As a business owner and as a sitting city council member, I think probably one of the larger reasons that we really should adopt the practice of having a business license is because our general fund relies on sales tax collection. And if we don't require businesses to register, we are potentially losing out on collecting sales tax from unregulated businesses who aren't paying taxes. This is a silly little example, but for example, I noticed just 2 weeks ago when we had the Christmas parade and the Acker Courthouse lighting, there were like street vendors selling balloons and Christmas lights and things on the street. And I'm sure they were totally unregulated, didn't have licenses, and weren't collecting sales tax. That's just a minor little example. But that could be extrapolated to a much larger scale, and we rely on sales tax to fund our general fund. And that, to me, is the most important reason for having a business license. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for those comments and questions. So continuing on here, we looked at Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Payson, and past survey results from the previous iteration of the business license. And Mayor Pro Tem has given us kind of supplemental information as well with some other cities across the state. We looked into a lot just to try to get general terms of what's happening out there. So typically they're processed in a few different areas in a city. It's either the city clerk's office, community development, or a separate business license division. Generally takes 30 days for processing, and the applications are done online. Fees range really from 30 to 70. That's pretty much the average that you'll see. And that could include the one time, which could be more for an inspection, and then less for the future years going forward after that. They do usually require an inspection and a zoning review so that they can ensure there's compliance there. And like Mayor Pro Tem said, the general purpose is to ensure quality business activity by protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the people. So that's typically what we found when researching other cities and what they're doing.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you. Sorry, Tyler, I'll be quick about this. I just have a question. How do you manage the building inspection component when you have businesses that are renting office space inside of a existing building? And I'm thinking, like, when I started my business in 2017, when this business license was in effect, I rented a 300 square foot office space inside of a much larger building. And I understand, like, there's a fee associated with that building inspection, but does it get prorated out for that person? And when you have other places, businesses, for instance, there's more than 2, I think, co-working spaces inside the city of Prescott. How do you address those building inspection components? Do they fall under that at-home category, or how do you manage that?
That is a great question. And to be honest, that would be something that we'd want to dive into more. And it sounds like the general direction is council wants us to come back with even more details planned out. That's a question, because in the prior business license, we did, I believe, if I'm looking in the back to our finance folks, we did inspect individual offices, or no? Maybe Lars, if you remember.
I'll say that when I tried to get the business license, it was a roadblock that kept coming back in, where I kept having to reach out to the city and saying, I want to get my business license so I'm legitimate. And they said, we don't yet have a process in place. And I don't know if maybe I just got lost in the shuffle, but at the time they didn't have a process.
Yeah, I think that that's an important piece of this, whenever we're looking at these types of things, is to understand what were the barriers and how do we do better. And that's one that I think in the last iteration we did require landlords basically to get business licenses. And, in my mind, if the landlord's not doing a business, they just own a building. It's the businesses within the building. This is just me thinking, but that the landlord might need to be the one paying for the annual fire inspection, of the full building. So, we can look at that and come back with some options as to how that might be best worked through with the system and try to make it as streamlined as possible.
Thank you.
So jumping into some considerations, and this is just really taken from what we've seen other cities do, but to keep the scope limited, and that kind of goes to the next bullet point. And we're thinking about outcomes. We're trying to understand the core reasons for the licensing, which you have all illustrated today. But what are the costs and benefits to the city? What the cost and benefit to businesses and to the public? Understanding what the community, the business community specifically expects. Receiving input from affected city departments. If there's oversight, if there's management, which of course there will be. If there's programming here, if there's other things that need to happen, what are the demands on the budget and on staffing, and what fee would cover those costs, for example. Understanding also what council is willing to do to enforce for noncompliance. Are we what on the spectrum of strictness, how strict are we going to be with compliance, and what are we willing to do for noncompliance? So just some things to think about, but also seeking specific outcomes. Is it understanding who's doing business in the city? Is it focusing on public safety and welfare with business emergency contact information and communication, economic development and business communication? Is it preventing issues with zoning conflicts, fire codes, zoning, I mentioned that, safety, ensuring businesses can seamlessly receive a certificate of occupancy, and maybe creating a single entry point for businesses to communicate with the city, to be compliant with the city. It might also be a way for us to communicate with them, whether it's, hey, if you need a new sign, here's how to go about ensuring that you're following the sign code. And if you need questions answered on code compliance, we're happy to assist you, or some proactive things that might be able to help businesses in the community. So with that, and with the time that we have left, we wanted to receive even more council feedback, if you have it for us. What are the primary outcomes that you'd like to see in this program? What specific elements would you like to include? Are there any questions that we haven't answered that we could further research, and we'd like to formulate something to bring back to you at a future study session?
Councilman Moore, did you still have a question?
No, Mayor, but just the final comment. I would like to, because all the slides that you showed, there was nothing on that sales tax element. So I just want to make that point again. That's really, I think we need a level playing field. That anybody who's doing business in our city limits is collecting sales tax, and it's going to the general fund. Thank you.
Councilmember Russi.
I just want to thank Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Contalme for starting the conversation. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. I just would like to remind everyone that the city of Prescott is the economic driver for all of Yavapai County, and Yavapai County is the 4th largest county by population in the state of Arizona. So implementing a business license will be another example of good governance by the Prescott City Council. Thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I consider looking at business licenses, especially just being in the campaigning season out there with the public all over the place, is that people are bringing up perhaps some abuses of some businesses when it comes to our public service offices, police, fire, et cetera. The high frequency, high call addresses. I would love to understand some of that data. By having business licenses, we can begin to get that data. And then in a weird way, I kind of think of this like the city's alarm program. You know, you're allowed one free problem. And then if you start abusing our alarm program, then we're going to start charging you. And when you consider how much we have to invest in police and fire in the next few years, the high frequency users need to be carrying maybe more than their fair share. So that's the first thing. And then the second is, again, we have this whole need here in the community about workforce housing. And I really want to understand how many rental units or facilities in this town are being tied up with diversion programs, sober living homes, all those other kinds of things that we're losing the ability to have good citizens as members of our workforce here in our own town. So just getting our arms around these challenges with data through the business license program, I think is a great start to figuring out how do we move forward.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Lois, thank you for bringing that up, because that is another thing that we will be affected by when we have this full-service jail open. The diversion programs are already affecting me in my neighborhood in the downtown area, and I've often wondered about the numbers. I would love to know that data. But also, I do want to say to the business community, you know, I've been paying for business licenses my entire professional life. This is not meant to torture anybody or cause problems or make them do anything differently than what they're doing. I'm in favor of making it as simple as possible. Some of the things you had up on the last slide, the inspections, the fire marshal already does that. Leave that under that program. Take it out of our realm. I don't care if the license is $8. I mean, the point of the license is, I would like it to cover its costs, but it's to gather information that we need as a city to move forward in all those things that we spoke about: economic development, our safety in our neighborhoods. We have a right as a municipality to know who's setting up business in our community, because ultimately we, the taxpayer, end up paying for the impact of those businesses. So if we had the knowledge, I'd like to think that we could get ahead of the curve instead of allowing, whether it's a sober living homes, whatever it could be, to come in and literally take our community over. And that's what we're trying to prevent, to make sure that this is an even playing field for all of us. It's not fair for police and fire to have to suffer the brunt of any one scrupulous industry that decides to come to our neighborhoods and take us over. So it's not meant to torture anybody, make your life more miserable. It's meant to collect the information that we as a city need to know. Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation, Tyler?
It does. Thank you.
I think you, well, obviously, we're not taking a vote today. This is a study session. But I think you can hear from the council that we have a pretty strong consensus that a minimal but effective business license environment is something that we would like to see established.
Okay.
Do we have any comments from the public?
We do not.
Mayor, may I say one more?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sarah, I'd like to, if it be possible, to publish on our website this list of every single other municipality in the state of Arizona
just so the business community knows that we're not picking on them. But, I mean, it starts at Apache Junction all the way down El Mirage, Miami. I mean, you name it. This is a piece of paper I think everybody should be able to have to see if they're questioning anything. And as the mayor said earlier, in our region, the only person that doesn't have a business license is Dewey Humboldt that I know of right now. So it's good information to read. Thank you.
I'll speak for Sarah real quick since she's a little under the weather on her voice. We will make sure that gets posted with the agenda so that if people want to go back and look at that it's always with the agenda and always on the site.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our study session today. It's now 2:56. We're going to take a 10-minute break and reconvene with our regular voting meeting at 3:06.